The mystery of death. It's maybe the oldest question we've got, isn't it?
Yeah.
What actually happens when, everything stops?
For centuries, yeah.
And people who've had these really profound near-death experiences, NDEs, they often talk about, well, the stories, floating outside the body.
Seeing your life flash before your eyes.
Right, that tunnel of light, maybe meeting strange figures. They've offered these, I guess, glimpses, or at least these incredibly consistent accounts of what might be next.
And the consistency is remarkable across different cultures, different times. It makes them really compelling. But historically, they've been seen as, very personal, subjective, maybe just psychological.
Exactly. But what if? What if there's this really surprising twist? What if some powerful intelligence agencies, let's say the CIA specifically, weren't just idly curious? What if they were secretly and really deeply involved in actually studying these things? The sources we're digging into today, well, they suggest exactly that.
And these documents, we've got leaked reports, accounts from alleged whistleblowers. They raise this really fascinating, maybe even unsettling question. Why on earth would the CIA care about NDEs?
Right.
And based on this material, what did they allegedly find out? Or maybe even what did they try to do with it?
That's the core of it. So our mission here in this deep dive is to really unpack these specific sources you've pulled together. We want to understand the allegations that connect the CIA to NDE research, even experiments.
Okay.
We're stepping into this weird alleged intersection of consciousness, death, and, government interest. And it raises some truly surprising ideas and honestly some pretty unsettling questions. So let's get into what these sources actually claim.
Okay, let's start where the sources suggest this whole thing kicked off. The material points towards some kind of classified CIA initiative back in the 1970s.
Right, and the sources mention that at first glance maybe it seemed connected to their infamous MK Ultra program, the mind control stuff.
Yeah, that connection comes up. But these sources suggest it pivoted. It became something maybe even more profound or, depending on how you look at it, disturbing.
Okay, how so?
What the sources highlight is that the focus allegedly shifted. It went beyond just manipulating an active mind. They were supposedly looking into what happens to consciousness after the brain stops functioning normally, specifically right at the point of clinical death.
Wow. So the alleged method described in these sources, they were working with people who had actually survived clinical death, people who'd already had a natural NDE.
That seems to be the claim, yeah, using subjects who'd been there and come back.
And the finding, what does the sources say these subjects reported?
Well, the reported findings, as documented in these sources, they're pretty striking. They talk about the classic out-of-body experiences, moving through tunnels of light, this feeling of accessing deep knowledge. But crucially, the sources claim these subjects came back with detailed descriptions of events that happened while they were clinically dead, like zero measurable brain activity.
Things they absolutely shouldn't have been able to witness, conventionally speaking.
Exactly. Things happening in the room or even elsewhere that they somehow perceived.
Okay. So if that's what the CIA was allegedly hearing, what was the motivation, according to the sources? Why would an intelligence agency care about that?
The core idea, based on these sources, seems to be this. If consciousness isn't tied only to the physical brain, if it can exist separately, well, then maybe it could be controlled or influenced or, potentially even weaponized, which led to this critical question they were allegedly exploring. Could you actually pull information, maybe even classified secrets from someone who was clinically dead?
And then bring them back.
And then revive them, yeah.
Okay, that definitely shifts things. It takes the alleged interest from just, studying past experiences to maybe trying to control or use them. And the claims seem to get even more intense from there. The sources don't just say NDEs were studied passively. They allege they might have been induced deliberately under controlled conditions.
Right. And this is where some of those alleged whistleblower accounts, the ones mentioned in the sources, really come into play. They described claimed CIA involvement in actual experiments designed to push subjects right to the brink of death.
And the alleged methods described, they're pretty chilling. Things like cutting off oxygen supply to the brain, inducing temporary cardiac arrest, using really powerful anesthetics.
Basically techniques designed to mimic that state of clinical death, but while they could, closely monitor the subject's reported experiences.
So what did these participants allegedly report? Similar stuff to natural NDEs.
That's the claim in the sources, yeah. Eerily similar occurrence, encountering unknown entities, seeing visions of past events, and that really strange, persistent feeling of something waiting just beyond.
According to these sources, why? Why would they allegedly go to such extreme lengths? What were the supposed goals?
Well, the sources suggest some pretty extreme objectives. Intelligence agencies were allegedly trying to figure out if consciousness, or maybe what some people call the soul, could be, harnessed in ways we just don't understand yet.
Harnessed for what?
Could someone trained to navigate this near-death state maybe access hidden knowledge? Could you use these techniques to perhaps create a soldier who is essentially immune to fear, even fear of death itself? These were the kinds of dangerous possibilities allegedly being looked into.
But that's a huge leap from just studying people's stories. Speaking of strange leaps, the sources also dig into this alleged link they supposedly found between NDEs and remote viewing.
Ah, yes, the Stargate connection.
Right, that whole idea of perceiving distant places or information just using the mind ties right into the CIA's known Stargate project from the 80s.
And what's really interesting in these sources is the specific alleged finding within Stargate. They reportedly discovered that some of their most reliable, most successful remote viewers, they had previous near-death experience.
And did the sources say why? What was the explanation these viewers gave?
Allegedly, these individuals claimed their NDEs had basically taught them how to detach their consciousness, their awareness from their physical body almost at will.
Like a switch they learned to flip.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And this apparently led the researchers, according to the sources, to this really fascinating suspicion. Maybe NDEs aren't just about dying. Maybe they're actually evidence of some kind of untapped human ability.
The ability to perceive reality from outside the physical body.
Exactly, a non-local perception capacity.
And you can see why an intelligence agency would be interested if that was on the table. The sources must suggest potential applications, right?
Oh, yeah. Ideas like spies observing secret enemy locations without ever setting foot there, or gathering military intelligence just through mental means, no need for satellites or physical recon. Big potential.
Okay, so they're allegedly exploring NDEs directly, trying to induce them, linking them to remote viewing. But the sources also claim the CIA didn't just keep this in-house, right? They allegedly involved universities.
That's another layer, yes. The sources allege that while universities were doing their own public research on NDEs, perfectly legitimate scientific inquiry, the CIA was secretly funneling funds into some of this research too.
Why? What was the alleged strategy there?
Using established scientific institutions of a kind of cover, the sources claim, it was supposedly a way to gather valuable data and insights on consciousness without attracting unwanted attention or revealing their own specific, maybe more operational.
Makes sense. And what was the key question driving this alleged, publicly funded, secretly backed research, according to the sources?
It seems to boil down to this. Do NDEs grant access to information that's beyond normal human perception? Could people coming back from near death somehow know things they shouldn't?
Like what kind of thing?
Future events, things happening far away, maybe even sensitive classified information.
Which naturally brings up a massive security risk question, right? As alleged in the sources.
Absolutely. Could a dying person, maybe someone important, somehow access state secrets in that state? And if they're revived, could they bring that forbidden knowledge back with them? That's a serious concern alleged in these documents.
Okay, this leads us towards some specific alleged projects mentioned in the source material. One that stands out is Project X89, sometimes called the Heaven's Backdoor Experiment.
Yes, Project X89. This was allegedly a highly classified project, supposedly running in the late 1980s.
And its main focus, according to the sources, wasn't just studying or inducing, but actually trying to synthesize these death simulations artificially.
That seems to be the core objective described, yeah. Probably to have more control, bypass relying on spontaneous or traditionally induced NDEs.
How do they allegedly try to do that?
The sources describe using medically induced near-death states, but combining them with classified, supposedly very advanced neuroimaging technology. And the test subjects,
Who were they?
often drawn from covert military units, intelligence divisions, the sources claim. People presumably already vetted, trained for sensitive op, maybe more resilient or controllable.
And the alleged outcomes.
Sure.
What did the sources say happened in X89?
Pretty dramatic stuff reported in the sources. Subjects supposedly described encountering, non-physical entities, beings, and perhaps most startlingly, some allegedly saw future events with what was described as uncanny accuracy.
Seeing the future.
That's the claim. But maybe the most alarming alleged result from X89, according to these sources, some subjects who were revived apparently lost their normal linear sense of time.
What do you mean?
They claimed they could perceive events beyond just the present moment. They could anticipate future things before they happen, like their timeline got scrambled or expanded.
And was there an attempt to weaponize that specific alleged ability?
The sources suggest exactly that, using these NDE survivors, these altered individuals, for some kind of covert predictive intelligence gap, trying to foresee enemy actions or political events or tech breakthrough, with any results naturally buried deep in classified files, never meant to see the light of day.
Okay, let's circle back to that Stargate connection for a moment. The sources mention another specific alleged project related to that, right? Project Specter.
That's right, Project Specter. This study reportedly zeroed in specifically on NDE NDE-induced remote view.
So taking that link they thought they found and really trying to exploit it.
Basically, yeah. The core idea here, according to the sources, was to investigate if that altered state of consciousness during or after an NDE could specifically boost the ability to perceive classified, highly secure information through remote viewing.
How did they allegedly test that?
The experiment described in the sources sounds pretty intense. They allegedly put NDE survivors into sensory isolation tank, total darkness, silence, and then tasked them with describing highly secure government facilities, places they'd absolutely never visited, maybe never even heard of.
And the results, were they successful?
The alleged results were reportedly astonishing. The sources claim some subjects provided details about secret military, for instance, that were incredibly accurate, sometimes down to blueprint-level detail.
Stuff they simply shouldn't have known.
Exactly. The claim is these NDE survivors demonstrated remote viewing abilities that far surpassed even the best ordinary trained psychics in the main Stargate program.
I can imagine that would raise some eyebrows, even internally.
Apparently it did. The sources mentioned significant ethical concerns being raised. The project was reportedly slapped with very high classification, and despite some leaked documents suggesting it happened, the official line, according to the sources, was denial. It never existed.
Another really bizarre alleged operation mentioned in the sources is something called the light tunnel experiment.
Yes. This was reportedly more of a psychological experiment, but still highly classified. It was designed specifically to try and reproduce that famous NDE light tunnel phenomenon.
Okay, why? What was the alleged goal there?
To figure out definitively, if possible, whether the tunnel is just, a hallucination generated by a stressed brain, or could it be something more, like a genuine gateway, for lack of a better word.
And the method. How did they allegedly try to trigger it artificially?
The sources talk about using advanced optical and neural stimulation techniques, specifically mentioning high-frequency electromagnetic waves, carefully calibrated to try and mimic the neurological patterns observed during actual NDEs. The hope was to artificially spark similar vision.
Did it work? What were the alleged results?
Well, the alleged results were unexpected and deeply strange, according to the sources. Some participants reportedly described feeling physically pulled towards some unknown force. Others encountered strange figures or heard voices that seemed to reveal hidden information.
Not just seeing a tunnel, then.
No. Yeah. Some even reported feeling like they genuinely left their physical body and entered some kind of unexplainable space, totally defying normal description.
What happened to this experiment?
The sources note it was allegedly shut down pretty abruptly without a clear explanation given, and several key researchers involved reportedly resigned or were reassigned, just disappeared from their posts shortly after. Very mysterious.
Okay, one more specific area the sources touch on. A classified study allegedly looking at NDEs and precognition, seeing the future.
Right. This discusses a report supposedly originating from a CIA-funded facility, maybe out in California, that was specifically studying potential precognitive abilities in people who had survived NDEs.
What was the basis for this? Why did they allegedly think NDEs could link to seeing the future?
It apparently came about because multiple test subjects, after being revived from clinical death, allegedly demonstrated an uncanny ability to predict real-world events, and with surprising accuracy.
Can you give any examples mentioned in the sources?
The sources provide a couple of alleged standout cases. One account describes an ex-intelligence officer who, after an NDE, reportedly predicted a specific assassination attempt on a major U.S. political figure weeks before it actually happened.
Wow.
Another involves a survivor who allegedly described in detail a catastrophic airline disaster, the type of plane, the location, the cause, which then occurred almost exactly as they'd foreseen it.
That's chilling. What was the alleged agency response to findings like that?
Swift and decisive, according to the source. This research was immediately classified at the highest levels, and allegedly, efforts were made to actively discredit any public discussion or suggestion that NDEs might have predictive elements. Keep it contained.
And the why? Why the alleged urgency to classify and discredit based on the sources?
Well, think about it. If NDEs could genuinely offer glimpses into the future, it completely overturns our standard understanding of linear time. It suggests that knowledge of future events isn't fixed, that it might somehow be accessible under these extraordinary physiological or psychological conditions. That's a paradigm.
Absolutely. Okay, wow. So just to kind of pull this together, the sheer breadth of the alleged CIA interest and the experiments described in these sources, it's huge. It runs from secretly studying people who had NDEs naturally.
Right, and the information they might bring back.
All the way to allegedly trying to induce these states or even synthesize them artificially in labs. and then attempting to harness these reported abilities like remote viewing or even predicting the future for actual intelligence operations.
Yeah, these sources taken together, they paint this picture of intelligence agencies being intensely focused on consciousness, especially beyond the point of physical death. And not just out of some philosophical curiosity, right? But for the alleged potential to access hidden knowledge, secret, and maybe even to weaponize perceived non-physical capability. It's a very pragmatic, if deeply strained, alleged motive.
And bringing this back to you, the listener, these allegations, I mean, if there's any truth to them as described in these sources, they raise questions that go way beyond just government secrecy or ethical boundaries, don't they?
Absolutely. They touch on the fundamental nature of human consciousness itself. What are the real limits of our perception? Maybe even the basic fabric of reality and time as we understand it.
It really forces you to take a challenging look at the conventional views of, well, what happens when the body stops and what extraordinary capabilities the human mind or maybe consciousness itself might actually possess, latent or otherwise.
Yeah, it's deeply provocative material.
So here's a final thought based on all this.
Yeah.
If these sources are to be believed, and an agency like the CIA allegedly saw NDEs as a potential backdoor to secrets or even predictive power, what does that truly imply about the vast, maybe untapped potential lying within human consciousness? And if governments were allegedly trying to get a handle on this, who else might be out there right now trying to understand or maybe even control these experiences? What if these experiences, these NDEs, aren't just strange personal anomalies?
What if there's something more?
What if they're actually keys to unlocking fundamental aspects of existence that mainstream science or perhaps even government are only just beginning to fumble towards grasping? Leaves you wondering, doesn't it?